Welcome to Fostering Career Exploration and Self-Discovery in the First Year Experience. Thank you for coming today. Today's webinar will be recorded and it will be sent out tomorrow by email. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to enter them in the chat window. We'll address them as we can. Otherwise, we'll have a question and answer period at the end, and you'll have a chance to ask your questions then. Today's webinar is brought to you by Human Resources. Human Resources is a worldwide leader in the development and provision of online personal assessments, student success, and education and career development programs. We also have a free resume service, and you can learn more about all of this at humanresources.com. Today, we have Nick Rabinovich here to talk about ways to encourage career exploration and self-discovery within the first year experience. And to give you a little bit of background information on Nick, Nick oversees the educational content of our products at Human Resources and the resources that support those products. He works closely with educational research consultants and performs his own research to continuously improve our current suite of products. Nick has worked in the online education and career development field for 20 years. Prior to that, he spent 7 years as a high school teacher, covering several subjects, including biology, physics, math, and psychology. Nick has a Bachelor of Science degree in biological sciences and psychology, a Bachelor of Education in secondary education, and most recently a certificate in data science to round that all out. And I'd like to welcome Nick to today's call, and over to you.
Thank you, Tamara. Nothing like inflating your own ego to hear someone else introduce you. So I appreciate that, Tamara. Tamara did a lot of hard work to put this together as well. So definitely like to credit her as well. You've heard enough about me. I will talk a little bit about the company that we represent, Human Resources. We do have pretty wide reach, as you can see in this slide, over 1.5 million individuals, over 130 countries we've managed to reach with our various assessments and other educational products that we provide and workforce products that we provide. And we've been in the business quite a while. We were, in fact, one of the very first companies of the like to provide online assessment for the purpose of career exploration and for self-discovery. So we like to leverage that experience. I myself have been with the company for over 15 years. I was with another company that did a very similar thing for about 5 years prior to that. So that's what added up to my 20 years. But I'm the type of presenter that I don't mind getting questions all along the way. So if you want to submit your questions in the chat that Tamara mentioned earlier, please feel free to do so at any time. You don't have to save them for the end. I'd much rather answer a question in context than wait for the subject to pass by, so to speak. So with that, I'll get started. I'll try to be sensitive to everybody's time and talk about our outline today. So these are the sequence of topics we're going to cover today. And I wanted to present this to you to know what's coming, but also to give you a chance to ask any additional questions in advance about maybe other topics you were interested in. So first of all, we're going to talk about what options FYE typically has around career exploration and self-discovery. We're going to talk about them in terms of layers because they can grow and add on to one another as you progress. We're going to talk about how to get set for self-discovery because there's a sort of a mindset, a preset to get ready for it to be effective when you're going to carry it out. We're going to go over some assessments that we provide as Human Resources that can help you. But of course, you can take the knowledge that we impart to you today about the assessments in general. Of course, you can be successful with many different types of assessments. We're pretty proud of ours, so we hope you use ours, but we know that you have options out there. We're going to talk about our philosophy around career exploration and why that philosophy is effective. It's research-based, so that's why we carry it out. And then we're going to talk about using curriculum in association with assessments for career exploration. We know not everybody has opportunity to use full-fledged curriculum, and that's why we talked about I mentioned the layers earlier before. We're going to build up to that point, and we're going to talk about the importance of having full integration between all the tools and how you deliver that to students for it to be effective. So now I think Tamara's going to throw up a poll to get a sense of your role at your institution. If you could click in that and give us an indication of your role, so that'll help us tailor the presentation today. Tamara, just let me know when the results are in.
We've got a pretty even distribution at this point. So we have
Okay.
counselors, looks like another couple more are instructors. We have administrators, and we have other, if you wanted to type what what your role is into the chat, that just helps us see. As Nick said, he's great at tailoring presentations to
Yeah.
his audience.
Well, it sounds like we have a pretty widely distributed audience, so I'll try to be a sort of jack of all trades or a presenter of all trades today, if I can. But if you have any specific questions that relate to your specific role, that certainly helps as well. Cool. We got a librarian here today. That'll be a first for us in terms of our presentations. And an academic advisor. We've seen many academic advisors come through here before. So that's great. Of course, the more people involved in first year experience and in career exploration, the more benefit students can gain from that. So, and a director of academic support and student success. I like that title, by the way. So that's good. We got a good rounded out audience today. So I'll try to present in that nature. So next
Also
slide.
ask a little bit about their first year experience
Right.
as well, if that's okay. I'll launch this poll as well, just finding out about how you implement it. We know that first year experience can have a really wide implementation in the way that it's done at different institutions. Sorry, I can't share the poll live, so you can't watch the numbers I'm watching. It's looking like the majority of people, just over half, have a course. And then we have around 20% have orientation, and just under that have workshop or webinar. And just over 10% have our other in how they.
Cool. And someone even indicated they have all of the above, which is great. But yeah, it looks like the majority have a course, which is excellent. That gives you more flexibility in how you implement self-discovery and career exploration. And when we get into the curriculum, hopefully you recognize some of the excitement around how we can do that, how we can help human resources, but also some best practices we've learned over the years because we've had that course out there so long. So any other
And
polls, Tamara? Am I forgetting one?
we do. Sorry to front load these all on everybody here. We have one more on assessment use, if that makes sense to do it now.
Sure.
Just see really simple questions, at least, on whether you use assessments, and if you do, how many assessments you use. And recognizing, of course, that career assessments can have a large number of interpretations on what assessment even means. But it looks like about 65% of people are using assessments, and about a third don't use any right now. So
Okay.
I'll share the results here quickly. But we also have almost half have 2 or more assessments that they use as part of it.
Okay, good. Yeah, we're going to talk about multi-assessment versus single assessment, and then I probably will have to address the with assessments and without assessments. Of course, being an assessment company, we're going to strongly advocate you use an assessment, but hopefully provide good enough reason why as well. So next slide I'll move to right now is the different options you have in FYE to support career exploration and self-discovery. Assessments we see as sort of a pretty good starting place to do it. They don't take a lot of time. The ones that we offer are between 15 and 20 minutes for students to complete. And then looking through the results, they may spend anywhere from another 15 minutes up to a couple of hours, depending on the degree of implementation you're willing to put forth. So in that case, all in all, you can spend from as little as half an hour to much longer on them. So it's a really good starting place. And we're going to get into why they act so well in terms of self-discovery, producing honest results that try to prevent bias or other types of misrepresentation of self. Then we're going to talk about layering your content. So because you've been running FYE programs out there for some time, I'm sure you have developed content already. If you've integrated it very nicely with all the different solutions you have around FYE and career exploration, congratulations, you're already ahead of the game. But we're going to talk about solutions today that can help you integrate those things all in one place to make it much easier for not only the students to experience them, but for the institution to track it all, because that's critical if you're going to see the success of the program, be able to measure success and adapt as needed. The last, we're going to talk about pre-built curriculum. So this can be either in lieu of your content or in addition to your content, entirely up to you. But there is lots of pre-built curriculum out there. We're going to talk about things to look for when you're looking at a pre-built curriculum around career exploration and self-discovery. And we're going to show you the pre-built curriculum that we have built as an example of that. So that's what layers. I wanted to get, it's post lunch here where I am. I know some people are probably closer to supper, but I thought I'd show you that nice, delicious tuxedo cake. Make you not too hungry, but maybe look forward to dessert later today if you want. So setting the stage for self-discovery. This is really the first part of the presentation. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of this. So setting up self-discovery is not just a matter of going, here you go, here's an assessment, go ahead and take it. It needs a level of setup. What I like to compare assessment to, self-assessment for self-discovery, is to a student creating their own playlist. You can see my made up Spotify playlist on the right. I am a Spotify subscriber. I'm not necessarily selling it today, but it's just a good metaphor. Once you choose your songs, just like you would be answering questions in an assessment, the algorithm will learn more about you in an honest way because you're making honest selections about the music you truly like. There's no right or wrong answers. There's no one better than the other. It's just about your music. And as a result, the algorithm can suggest music to you that you haven't seen before, but probably matches your taste and you will tend to like. And that's the same thing a career assessment or a self-discovery assessment can do. It sort of gets into the deeper fine-grained things behind the scenes. So some of the psychology behind the statements that are designed into the questions, it looks at granular bits of that people often don't recognize in themselves. It's really hard to self-analyze and be unbiased. So that's what assessments can do. I try to do this slide in a fun way to say, get ready. That first song you see in the playlist is getting ready by setting this up for the students and saying, hey, if you're honest with these questions, you're going to get much better results. Don't pick songs or don't answer questions in this case in a way that you think you should answer them, or in a way that you think is right, or in a way that you think your friends or your parents or any other person who may influence you thinks you should answer them. It's all about just being honest and picking the music. And that's going to help you avoid repeats. So you don't say, oops, I did it again after you complete the assessment, or I need to do it again. There's no ideal results, I said. You don't have to think about, is this going to go my way? You just think about what you got, like I said. And like I said before, accuracy is built by design in these assessments. There's a lot of research that goes into testing these assessments, ensuring the reliability and validity. So you got to look for assessments that are built accuracy by design. Look for statistical measures for those assessments. Free ones that you may find on the internet often do not have those rigorous standards in place to set up for reliability and validity. So if you want a good result from assessment, you need to look for those things. Of course, we offer them in human resources, and I'll show you a little more detail about that later. It's also important to consider the results. So not every suggestion, not every song you're going to get suggested to you, and not every career you're going to get suggested to you will be 100% on target. It's an algorithm. It has to learn. And the more assessments that you complete, the more accurate the results will be. That's why we talk about multi-assessment. So it is important to consider results and not necessarily take everything right at face value. And also remember, results can change. People change, so results can change. That's why you can repeat assessments given the period of time in between, and that's just fine. A big part of self-discovery, and we'll show you in the assessments, that if you take an assessment once, you might want to take it again a year later and see how you've developed, if it's measuring an aspect of people that can change over time, like skills, intelligences that we'll talk about. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be all your life that you have that. Okay. Any questions about that? So that's all about setting up. So relate this information to students before they do the assessment. Say this is going to help you if you're honest. It's just like a playlist. So the better you answer the questions in terms of being honest, the better your results will be. But, don't feel like everything has to match in the end, that you can pick and choose from your results, the ones that resonate best with you. And that's really what the ideal situation is. So here are 4 assessments that we offer at Human Resources as examples of assessments that can be that put together offer a sort of a big picture view and give you a good multiple lens view of what types of careers can match an individual and what aspects of yourself can lead to better self-discovery. Our first one at the top there, and I know there's a lot of information on the page here. Don't feel like you need to read all of it. Probably the 2 columns to focus on are simply just the name of it, what it's measuring. So in this case, True Talent Learning Productivity would measure 15 sensory, environmental, and mindset preferences. And then the last column is, it's all about how you interact with your surroundings. So this would be the work environment or the academic environment that would make you most successful. It's not necessarily the one that you like, quote unquote. I don't know if you can see me on camera here. I'm doing the air quotes thing. And it's about what makes you most productive and what helps you learn best. And our assessment is designed to this, not designed to say, hey, what do you like to do? If you like to lay around on a couch, and look at a screen and watch movies, that sounds great in terms of, having fun and visual stimulation, which would be one of the areas of sensory measure that we have. It's more about what type of mediums or what type of information would work best in terms of absorbing and you being able to retain that information over time. In other words, learn. So how you interact with the surroundings is a summary of that. True Talent Intelligences is based on Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, in case you've heard of it. And it's all about how you process and use information. There's lots of science that went into developing in terms of developing the assessment, but also in what those 9 intelligences are. There's brain-based research on that. There are specialized areas of the brain that correspond to each of the 9 intelligences. There's clinical research that shows when damage to certain areas of the brain occur, that it can affect one specific intelligence and not the 8 others. So we know that they are unique. So it is a true scientifically supported measure. And this is useful, obviously, in a work environment, thinking of processing and use information. That's going to be really important in whether you can be successful in that job. So that's why we use it as part of our career exploration assessment suite. Next, personality. You probably heard this before. It's related to the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Related. It is not the MBTI. It's just related because it produces the same type of measures in terms of personality type, which is based on Jungian and Myers-Briggs theory. And to define what it is, it's what you perceive and value. So perceive is how you look at the world and how it goes through the filter of your own sort of biases, not biases necessarily in a negative way, but just biases in terms of who you are. So that's your perceptions of the world. And then what you value, do you value relationships more, logic more, things of that nature. So that's why it's a nice complement to the other 2 I've already mentioned. And then finally, skills, which were determined by large-scale surveys of what employers and educators deemed key to success, generalized. So they're not specific hard-coded skills. These can be often compared to soft skills or what's called employability skills. You may have heard of 21st century skills. There's a similarity to those. And that's where you focus your abilities. So for example, you're in a role as a counselor, which many of you are on this call. Your role as a counselor is going to focus a lot on, first of all, probably organization if you're working in a post-secondary institution, because you have a lot of people under your purview. And you're also going to be a lot of interpersonal interactions. So those are skills where you may have skills in other areas. You may be great at math. You may, have great, when I say creativity skills in terms of art, but where you like to focus your skills as a counselor is going to probably depend on those previous 2 that I mentioned. So I did more about where you focus your abilities and not necessarily your raw talent. And so that's why that description. So taking a look at all these together, this is a really nice big picture view of self-discovery, because you can describe each of these assessments. And if you're using a suite of assessments, whether they're these or whatever suite of assessments you use, it's important to look, do I have any redundancy between my assessments? Am I getting different views of what students make students tick and what's going to help them in the long road in terms of career exploration and self-discovery? And make sure that you have a nice balance and a nice complementary suite of assessments, and that you have multiple assessments. If you only use one lens, it's going to be pretty hard to match up. It'd be like matching up your song list based on just the drum beat of the song, because you like the drum beat. But songs are much more than that, just like careers are much more than that. So you need to get a multi-lens view for that purpose. Okay, any questions so far? I want to make sure I'm not just railroading through this thing. I know I talk fast.
Don't see anything yet. Feel free to type it into the chat, or you can ask in the question and answer panel, or even just if you want to let Nick know that you hear him. There's also should be the option to react at your bottom of your screen.
Yeah. Has anybody thought about that? I'll ask this question a little more straightforward. Has anyone specifically considered the assessments that they used? Are these nice complementary to each other, or is it just like, this was, the first available one I saw, it looked good, or it's what my university uses, so that's why I'm using it? I just wonder how many people have put this type of thought into the suite of assessments that they use, or if they only use one assessment, whether they thought about adding other assessments, they weren't sure how to add on to that initial one. I see we're a quiet bunch. That's okay. That's fine. We can come back to that later. Okay. So I'm going to move forward a slide. And if you're still typing a question, I'm moving on, that's fine. I'll come back to it if need be. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these next slides. I want to be sensitive to your time. What I do want to say, though, is this presentation we're going to make available to everybody here. And of course, this is the recording for you to go through if you want to learn more about this. That'll be available to you. But I created these slides more as a sort of a takeaway of this is what the True Talent Assessment looks like on the right. And some of the things that can make a good assessment, like you see the ones on the right, is, first of all, it doesn't present too much text at once. Students, especially nowadays, it seems, if they're overwhelmed with text, they're tune out. So we try to piece it out into different parts. So this bar here under sensory preferences, for example, or environmental preferences, you can open and close. And it's really designed not to say, hey, you have to absorb all this content. It's about looking for the piece that resonates with you. So in this case, if you were to look at the bar graph here, one that stands out as furthest to the right or left would be this focus one. So that would be literally something to focus on, ironically, because it's what stands out the most in terms of being far from center. So in this case, you would focus on the recommendations made there. Just an example of what recommendations are, you can see down here. And I'm sorry if this is a little bit blurry. It's not intended to be read right now in this presentation, but there would be a list here would go on beyond the page break and provide recommendations, multiple ones, again, only choosing the one that really resonates with the student, because we know that they're not going to complete all this. They have many other things to do. And typically the recommendations dovetail with what the student is doing already. So if you're looking for an assessment, look for something that already works within the bounds that the student is doing on any typical day. The student can't add on to their load typically. Many of them are working part-time, they're going to school, they have other personal responsibilities, some are raising kids, and we recognize that. We don't think that students have endless time waiting around to complete assessments and look at all the results from their assessments. So it's important that you find one that has recommendations that says, okay, if you're going to be studying for this class, or if you're going to be building a presentation, if you're going to be organizing your house, and yes, we do have recommendations that relate to things in students' personal lives, here's one approach that you can use that may work better because it aligns to what we've measured about you through the assessment. So you want to find assessments that make recommendations that don't add on, but that fit in with what they're already doing. And that's what we've tried to attempt with our True Talent assessments. So I've talked in general, I talked about learning productivity in the different areas. So it measures 3 areas: sensory, environmental, mindset preferences. I don't have time to get into all the details about that. that's not intended today, but if you are interested, of course, you can look into it. But the key here, key takeaway is find an assessment that, first of all, is easily accessible by students. It's not overwhelming in terms of content, that provides different options, and that fits in with their existing daily activities. So intelligences, similar approach. Here are the 9 intelligences broken down in case you were curious. It's also about applying strengths, but also admitting challenge areas. That's one thing that we've seen as a company with different assessments in the space that we work in, is that some assessments really lean hard and almost completely into, let's just focus on your strengths. Don't worry about any of the challenge areas. And we feel that misses half the picture. There's nothing wrong with admitting you have an area of challenge. Sometimes that area of challenge can be developed to a degree that's going to help you be more successful in the career that you really want to go into. Sometimes it's just going to help you be more successful in life and round out the things. Sometimes just knowing that it's there can be helpful, even if you don't necessarily spend a lot of time. So that's another important thing to look for when you're looking at assessments and going, is this going to show me a balance of strengths and challenges? Because that's a more realistic view of the world, and that's going to help students more in the long run. Don't just focus entirely on the strengths, because that it really ignores half the picture. Personality, something that often gets missed, and that's a real big benefit of assessments, is respect for self and others. What I mean by that is when you get your personality measured and you go, okay, and I'm going to use the examples of the 4-letter type, which some of you may be familiar with. As an example, I am an ENTP. I tend to lean pretty heavily into that. I can flip between E and I depending on the day if I get tired of interacting with people, but for the most part, I get energized by interacting with others. And knowing that, and then knowing that other people are of different type, makes you recognize, hey, not everybody's going to think the same way that I think. And it helps with that whole sort of understanding and respecting others, maybe even finding a little bit of empathy in some cases. Just because I know that this is my way and this might be some other's way, and there's no one better way to do it. We're all just different. In fact, it's even helped me understand why my wife thinks differently than me very often, or my kids think differently than me. And I have to come to terms with that. And personality is just one way to kind of see that. It's not saying personality is the only way to recognize differences, but it's one way. And we've noticed over time as students complete personality assessments and sometimes even compare their results to others, with the understanding, the setup that no one is better than the other, that there's an increase in sort of respect for differences that occurs. And that's a great learning thing. That's a great part of self-exploration, is learning that you don't have to be the same as everybody else, and that's okay. And they don't have to be the same as you, and that's okay. So that's another benefit that comes away from this. And so don't miss out on that opportunity if you can. This is where sometimes institutions will focus entirely on, okay, here are your results, this is yours, you don't share this with anybody, this is just yours. Of course, offer the option if a student doesn't feel comfortable sharing the results with others, that's fine, you can respect that, but maybe encourage, hey, share this one part and they'll share that other part with you, and have a conversation about that, and that leads to good results. Of course, all these I'm kind of glazing over, but I'm going to get to more later, the matching careers. So don't fret that. I will come back to that. Skills is the last one, like I mentioned. Here, when you talk about development of skills, very often, and this is what I'll focus on for this assessment, and you can see the 5 major areas at the top there of those are skill areas, as we call them. So a different approach that we take with our assessment, and hopefully the assessments that you end up using take a similar approach, is not only do they say, here's where you landed in terms of this measure on the assessment, but it explains exactly what that measure is. Sometimes assessments don't do a very good job of that. We took care to ensure that that does happen with our assessments, where it says, hey, we just measured you on critical thinking as an example. Now let's explain exactly what critical thinking is, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. This is sort of a personal pet peeve of mine, of misunderstanding critical thinking and thinking, oh, that's really sort of being able to analyze things. And critical thinking is much, much more than that. I know as educators out there, you probably have a much better understanding of critical thinking than most people, but students often don't. They misunderstand exactly what critical thinking. So we actually break down each of those areas into exactly what they mean and what that means for you in terms of how you can be successful now as a student, but also what it might mean in various careers. Different types of critical thinking, like a journalist who has to do critical thinking versus a scientist who has to do critical thinking versus a judge who has to perform critical thinking in their job every day. There's sort of different flavors of critical thinking, and we break that down and explain why those are important. So that's something to make sure that assessments do well, is that they explain what they're measuring well to the student and to a professional like you who's going to implement it. Another thing that we like about the development, this is true of all of our assessments, is when it talks about the development of an area, it pre-personalizes it for the result that student got. Some assessments will take their measures and say, here's where you landed in this measure. Now here's how you can develop that skill, that intelligence, that productivity style. And it does it in a very general way. What we did is we looked at the results. So they landed on this place in the spectrum. And we've catered that advice based on where they land in the spectrum for that particular skill, intelligence, or productivity style. So it's highly personalized. So you want to look like the developmental approach to the follow-up of the assessment is personalized to the student, not just generalized. It's not like the measures are personalized, but the advice is not. You want to look for personalized measures, but also personalized recommendations that come out of that. Okay, how am I doing for time, Tamara, and speed? Just to check in.
You're at 1:30, so
Yeah.
We've said about 45 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
I'll get lost in my topics if I don't have someone like Tamara helping me. All right, so I mentioned research-based before. Again, this is a slide to just show you that we've done our homework. You're not meant to pore over all the details of it. We have full reports, which are multi-page long for each of the four assessments, excuse me. And we also align the results of our assessments with existing models to show not only that we're measuring what we say we're measuring, but what we measure has an impact, a real world impact on the success of students in school and in future careers potentially. So let's get a quick poll. If anyone could type into the chat now, any of those four models at the bottom of the slide right now, guided pathways, CAS standards, that's the Council for Advancement of Standards in Higher Education, and the NACE competencies. Does anyone follow that or use that or help use them as guides in what they do? I just want to know if anyone recognizes that anyone uses any of those, and maybe name the ones if you do. Great.
I see CAS standards and the NACE competencies.
Great. So if you do use those and act as a guide, or if you hope to use those in future, because they are great, then we have documentation on how the assessments support those pathways, standards, or competencies, depending on which you follow. So then you can implement more easily and show the evidence that, like, hey, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing because here's how things align. So it'll help you also implement the assessments, because it'll show you exactly which areas of the assessment focus on a particular standard, a particular competency. And so that's great. And even if you don't use our assessments, look for those guides out there for any assessment that you decide to use in the future.
And there are other answers here as well. We've got guided pathways, NACE, and someone's even all four. That sounds a bit tricky.
You're a slave of many masters. Yeah, that can be difficult, but it can also help guide you in a certain way. You can kind of lean on one that will help you in which area you need it at the time. So we're going to get into the career bit now, and I know I'm short on time, so this will move pretty quick. Our career development philosophy is something I've taken from an old saying that many of you, I'm sure, have heard, that, give someone a fish, they'll eat for a day. Teach someone a fish, they'll eat for a lifetime. I'm paraphrasing it, by the way. This can sort of be twisted into a career development philosophy of give someone a fish and they get what was picked for them. Teach someone to fish. In other words, teach someone to explore careers, to learn about careers, to find careers that they like. Teach them how to do that, and they eventually will find the career that they want. So that's something that you can communicate to the student. Say, why do I have to go through this career development? Why do I have to go through career exploration? And this is a great quote you can use for them and sort of sit there and look all wise and stroke your chin until they finally get it. But it's definitely can make a difference. And when you're upfront to students, transparent to students about why career development is important, why career exploration is important, they will catch on eventually. So how do we promote it with our products? So this is a picture of what we call our career list. So the far left, which I know these overlap, but just if you, the far left screenshot there shows a list of careers. That's a result that you can get from one of our assessments. In this case, it would be your skill results, as you can see with this line, but you can do the same thing for personality and for intelligences. And they would get a list of suggested careers in ranked order, which is not as important as exploring the list. So they're not actually numbered or have any match score. It's more like, here's ones, all these have the potential to work for you at some point in the future. And it's based on your skills. If they click on any one of those, they open up a career profile that's nice and colorful, like the middle screenshot that you see here, but it provides key pieces of information like, how does this compare to you? In this case, it's a great match. How does it look for wages? And how does it look for outlook, which is also an important metric that students often forget. You're going to be looking at jobs that have a good outlook, ones that are dying away, like ones that are being replaced by AI, as an example, may not be a good future plan if possible. And of course, what kind of education programs? So what programs at your institution or other institutions that they transfer from are going to be useful for that career. And then this is the part that most excites me as a career exploration advocate, is similar careers. So let's say they get this suggested and they're looking at bioengineers, biomedical engineers, and there's much more detail I'm not showing here, but they decide, this is kind of cool, but not exactly right for me. Is there something similar that I might like more? And that's what this bottom list is. All of these are related, but slightly different. And at a glance, you can see what are the major info differences that might matter to me. How well does this match me? That's the blue bars. What kind of education is required? What salary can I expect? And what's the outlook? Agricultural engineer, not a good outlook right now. There's a lot of machinery, even AI, moving into that sector. But things like validation engineers, which would relate us to some degree to AI and computers, very good outlook there. And maybe that's something I can look into, and they would simply move over that. So that's, you move from one career and you can move to other careers. That's a great career exploration method to do. Also important is to compare where you are at now, in this case, my skills, which would be indicated by the orange circle, and what's typically seen in the career, which are the triangles. So this is sort of a loose guide. It's not a strict qualification type thing, but it is useful to look at things like, well, for conscientiousness would be the only one I kind of come up short here. So maybe that's something I should look into developing if I want to maximize my chances of getting into this career and being successful in it. So it's kind of a quick, where do I need to focus to be most successful? And then they can, of course, look up conscientiousness and what sorts of training or places are available to help me develop that particular skill. So that's career exploration. Just to show you that the list that we generate, as you saw on the last screen, is a valid list. This is sort of the science behind how we do our career matching. And this is something you should look into any assessment. How are they doing their career matching? Is it supported by rigorous science? So what we do is we've looked at ONET data, which is the sort of gold standard in terms of measuring data. They do it on massive surveys. It's government-based, so less biased as a result. And they have over 130 data points that they collect for all the careers in their database, starting with skills, abilities, work styles, work contexts, and a bunch of other things that are not listed here. We take all that information and we align it to the assessment factors to produce what we call a career profile. In other words, you take the intelligence assessment and you're going to see your intelligence profile. We will plug these values into the algorithm we have, and we get an intelligence profile for the career. And then we can compare your intelligence profile and the career's intelligence profile and get a nice sort of what we call sum of squares distance, which in math, which I used to be part of, is kind of the main way to do that measure between the person and the career. And then you get a degree of match, which we can use to produce our results. So there is some real science that goes into developing, and you want to look for an assessment that does that well. Surrounding curriculum, and I know I'm getting short in time here, but I'll just mention this loosely. We do, in addition to our assessments, we have a what we call a curriculum publishing tool, which we call Publish First, as you see up here. And things you want to look for if you're going to build that, and I know LMSs can do this too, but sometimes there's value in having a separate piece to publish content that delivers career exploration and self-discovery to students. WYSIWYG, if you're not familiar with that, means what you see is what you get type build. So when you're building it, you don't have to code anything. You can click and drag things. In other words, when you build it, when it looks like what it'll look like in the finished product sort of thing. So it makes it easy because as educators, very few of us have the technical expertise to code something together. You want something that integrates with assessments, just like what we offer. You want to have a variety of different activities from quizzes, videos, reflections, and you would definitely want full LMS integration. And the nice thing to look for is real-time updating. Very often you implement content, you send out to students and you realize, oh, I forgot something. And if it's one of those things that it's already published into the LMS, I can't change it now. I'm stuck until next semester. Now, there's going to be some difficulties. So if you can find something that can update in real time, student notices something, you go on, you use your WYSIWYG interface to quickly click and drag, move it, delete it, add something in, and it's done. It's instantly published. That's going to be way better. And that's what we can offer with Publish First. So you have an example here of a quick lesson, which has a motivational set. You have an activity called matching a job to intelligence. You have a video, a TED video in this case, that's integrated right in there. It's not like they have to link out to a separate website. It's embedded right there. Whoops, let me go back. And then there's a reflection activity right there. That's going to be useful. And if this integrates into an LMS, even better. It's all in one place. It's not a bunch of things being cobbled together. College Scope is a full built curriculum using our Publish First tool, but much more robust than what you saw on that last screen. So I talked about layers early on. If you want to use the assessments, you can do that and just use those on their own, integrate them with whatever solution you have, whether it's just an LMS or something else. Or you can add on to those assessments with curriculum that you've already developed, maybe build it in a Publish First tool to make it more cohesive with the assessments that you're using or any other content that you want to add and be able to update in real time through a nice WYSIWYG interface. And if you don't have time to do that, you can take a pre-built curriculum like the one we have, which includes 9 different major chapter areas and has been curated over time to fit a college semester. We have many colleges who use this curriculum successfully integrated with our assessments to promote career exploration and self-discovery, as well as the other topics you see here. I've highlighted in orange the 2 major sections that deal with career exploration and career readiness, because I know that's relevant to you guys today for this webinar, but those other areas are there as well. I'll give you a moment just to kind of look at that, just to see the areas that we cover and how we break down career exploration and career readiness. And I know in the description, we mentioned the ability to perform an exercise, and we're going to show that next. You're going to get this as a takeaway today. That handout is available in this link. And what it is an exercise around your brand. So many students nowadays, in the days of social media, are throwing stuff out there, and not all of it necessarily looks good for them long term if a future employer Googles their name. So in this activity, they're asked to Google, Bing, and Yahoo their own name. I know Yahoo is still around, if you can believe it, and see what comes up. And then they're asked to evaluate what comes up from the eyes of a future employer and go, maybe I need to think about the things I post online. And also then think about what brand do they want to put forward, because they can relate that back to their career. If they're going to be a visual artist, they're going to think about putting some kind of portfolio together online. If they're going into medical research, they're going to think about what areas they may want to research and show their knowledge around that. So it's about putting forth a brand that's going to help with your employability in the future. Tamara has in the chat, by the way, put the link to download that activity now, if you like, because I know we're just at about time, or really at time. But I do want to mention one more thing. Like I said before, integrating with an LMS, and this is an example of a Canvas LMS, but you may have a different one. In terms of human resources, all of our solutions, so the assessments, the ability to publish your own curriculum through Publish First, the ability to use College Scope, which is our pre-built curriculum. All of that integrates seamlessly with multiple LMS systems, Blackboard, Canvas, D2L, Moodle. So you can see an example right here where the 4 assessments are integrated into Canvas top, and then the College Scope chapters, we call them, just below that. And it's a full integration. It's not just a link out. So when students complete the different activities, that's trackable in the gradebook of Canvas or whatever LMS system uses any kind of reporting tool. That gets directly tracked because we perform the deep integration with LMSs. So look for solutions that have that deep integration. It's not just a link out so that it's very hard to track their activity, or for students, it's a nuisance because now they're having to do another login. They're having to kind of jump around to different websites. You want them to be able to do it all in one place. And last thing to look for, I just want to mention this in passing, is if you're going to use a solution, hopefully find a solution that has some kind of support materials and reference, because often you'll see ones out there that don't have a lot of support around them. And ours obviously come with a lot of support. As you can see here, this is just a sort of starting list of all the ways we support our products in terms of being able to implement them effectively when you have questions, FAQs, instructor manuals, linking to crosswalks like we mentioned earlier. Even scholarships. We have an annual scholarship that we offer through College Scope that's associated to it. So, these are well supported. You're not high and dry if you have the products and you need to use them. And again, there's linked to more resources in case you want to check those out, because one or more of those may really resonate with what you're trying to do at your institution. All right. There, I think I took almost all the time, so I apologize for that. But if you have any lingering questions, I'm happy to answer any of those. Or if you want to point to something that I missed in terms of covering what you were looking for today, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Thank you so much, Nick, for today's information. And just to let you know, if you wanted to try the True Talent assessments for yourself, or to see the College Scope curriculum or the Publishing First platform, you can reach out to Carla Lundman at carla.l@humanesources.com. And thank you very much for your time today. If you have any questions, please let us know. Have a great day.